continuing the passwordless talk, and we have Toby from Okta. Toby, take it away.
Thank you.
Right arrow there.
Cool. You can all hear me, I think. Yep, cool. So Alex has done half my introduction for me, which is awesome because it will make my section go a little bit quicker. I'm specifically going to be talking about passkeys, which Alex did touch on, but we're going to kind of continue that conversation. Wrong way, of course, too much. We all know how crap passwords are. Someone sent me this the other day. I quite liked it. I think it kind of summarizes it quite well. So I won't need to go into, all these details. Today, I'm focused predominantly on consumer identity with passkeys. So Alex talked predominantly about enterprise and workforce. I'm going to talk about from the consumer perspective. So there's lots of stats up there. I think we all know, particularly in the consumer context, which Zoe touched on as well, like things like some businesses we speak to require you to call a contact center to reset a password, do things like that. I worked with one business that literally mailed the password reset, like the temporary password out. This was a number of years ago, but that's the sort of things that they were doing, right? So there's lots of problems. We know this, right? Particularly in the consumer context, there's lots of breaches, like credential stuffing is all over the place. We've got stats that show, particularly kind of during COVID when everyone kind of went to home, on our customer identity platform that Okta runs, which is called Auth0 or Customer Identity Cloud, at some periods of time, 80% of all traffic was credential stuffing attempts against the platform, right? So that's detection, stuff that we detected as being bot traffic. So like 80% of every login attempt, right? Also conversion rates, like if you go halfway through a purchase, you're buying a commodity item that's the same price somewhere else, you forgot your password, it's often easier just to go to the next site that sells it and buy it than it is to reset your password, right? So that's where you see lower conversion rates. So we have lots of common options, right? Just the reminder that a password is an authenticator. You can substitute it for other things, right? So when we talk about that, particularly in the consumer space, we see things like SMS-based OTP or email magic link. Particularly more advanced businesses like banks, etc., will do have been doing push notifications. We've seen kind of in the last few years an evolution of the concept of social logins. So in the past, it was like, signing with Twitter and Facebook, which I think most people don't see as relevant. But when you think how many people use their mobile phone as their predominant device to browse these consumer sites, that's either an Apple, it's got an Apple ID associated with it, or it's got a Google ID associated with it, right? So we have some businesses where 90% plus of their traffic is social login, and it's, if they're on iOS, they're using the Apple ID because they've bought the app or they've logged into the website and they've paid for their subscription using Apple Pay, which automatically provides all the credentials associated with your Apple ID or the user information, I should say. So that's Apple. And then on the Android devices, they've used Google Pay, they're signing with Google, they never put a password in, right, into that. But all you're doing with that is basically pushing that requirement out to other people, right? And then WebAuthn has been an option for consumer space, right? But unlike in the corporate world, you can't force people to use it, right? Which I think you touched on as well, like the adoption of it, right? And we know, and Alex has highlighted, not all of these factors are created equal. So like the gold standard is, FIDO2 WebAuthn YubiKey based authenticator that is tied to biometrics. It's phishing resistant, it's very high assurance, right? But that's not what we see on the vast majority of consumer websites in Australia. Passwords are by and far the largest standard, and even the ones that have adopted multi-factor, it's typically SMS or email as a second factor. Or some businesses that say asking you a security question after a password is a second factor. It's not, it's just like, anyway. So in terms of authentication experience, right, so there's factors that are more secure, but there's also the ability to complete that authentication, right? So this graph, it's a little bit odd. So size of the bubble is security. And then down the bottom is the passing rate, so the number of times that's asked for, how often it's passed, and then time to complete. So you can see, like, email as a factor is crap. It usually takes 30 seconds for the email to come through. If it comes through, if you've got your DKIM and your DMARC and all that set up properly. And the passing rate is quite low, right? Like 75% compared to WebAuthn devices where actually we see it's even higher than this, right? Like you can get up to 98, 99% even for consumer applications quite quickly. The other thing is it's a unique experience where the vast majority of users, particularly those accessing off a smartphone or something like that, if you have your WebAuthn device set up appropriately, it's very quick. It's a much better experience. It's like, oh, I'm unlocking the app with my face, right? Like you don't have to do codes or anything, right? It's a better experience as well. The predominant challenge for consumer applications with WebAuthn is enrollment friction. So even where you've got you obtain a YubiKey, or even if you have a device that supports it, you have to go through the process of enrolling it, right? And that I think slowed down part of the rollout, right? So what we're looking at now is passkeys and why they're kind of an evolution, a slightly different approach to WebAuthn that makes it easier, particularly for customer experience, right? The big thing about this is really, it started with Apple proposed some amendments to the WebAuthn standards that FIDO2 had. And the two things which Alex mentioned before, like the ability to synchronize your passkeys, and then the ability to support it across this wide range of platforms. And I actually think a good play was actually just changing the name as well. So rebranding it from WebAuthn/FIDO to Passkeys. It's a much sexier name. It's much easier for non-technology people to do it, right? The big platforms are fully on board with Passkeys. They want everybody to use it yesterday, and that's really helping the industry come across, right? The federal government has announced that they're going to roll it out for MyGov, which, if you look at the amount of money that's lost on scams to MyGov, fake tax returns, all those sorts of things is substantial. This is interesting, I think, for two reasons. The predominant reason is the government is out there spending money to tell people about MFA, and when they roll this out, they're going to be talking about passkeys a lot, right? So the requirement to educate your users drops, right? So you as a business individually don't have to spend as much time or effort doing the user education proportion because the government's doing it. Second thing is, do you want a customer ringing up and saying, hey, if the federal government can do it, like, how come you guys can't do it? You say you're a fancy e-commerce business and you can't even do passkeys, but they can do it on MyGov. So I think we'll see substantial uplift coming, right? So here's the simple definition of passkeys from the FIDO Alliance. Thanks. So you read that, there's a lot of words that make sense, but it's not really not really that informative. So what passkeys are an intuitive, discoverable credential. That's the point. And this is where we see the differentiation from what WebAuthn was. So discoverability is a key part of what makes passkeys better to use than WebAuthn. And that's where, and we've got a little demo later, you can see, when you go to a website, if you have a passkey, you're prompted automatically by your browser or by your device that you have a passkey. You don't have to remember if you have one. It's a similar experience to what you have with a password vault. They're phishing resistant, they're not easily shareable, quote unquote. And the other big difference is this cross-device authentication flow, which I will talk through. So we talked about synchronized passkeys and device bound. In a lot of cases, and in the corporate world, so like Okta workforce world, Browsers and device manufacturers are relabeling what was previously called WebAuthn or security keys as a device-bound passkey. So from a corporate perspective, really we're thinking device-bound passkeys rather than synced. So one of the big differences with passkeys over WebAuthn is this concept of synchronization that Apple first proposed. So basically storing the private keys in your iCloud profile, right? So if you have iCloud set up, you've got keychain enabled, you browse to that website on your phone, and then you see something you like, but you want to look at it on your laptop because it's a bigger screen or whatever. You browse to that site on your MacBook, having been there on your phone, your Apple phone. It's discovered on your phone, on your computer as well. So open up Safari, type in the browser. It says, hey, do you want to log in with your passkey? And you can log in. You haven't had to come up with a password or anything, right? You haven't had to do anything beyond having it connected, right? So passkeys are made available across, all the devices within the same platform or ecosystem. It started with, like the keychain, Google Password Manager, but it's also rolling out towards all the password vaults that we see, like 1Password, Dashlane, LastPass, Bitwarden, etc., are all adding support for it. One of the things this adds, and one of the reasons Alex was saying it's less secure than passkey, right, is you're now basically offboarding the security of that key to however that account is set up. So however my Apple account is set up, someone can get in it. My partner might have access to it, people in my family, etc. So that's why it's less secure than a device-bound passkey, right? And tends to be discouraged for workforce use cases today. So just in the context of this conversation, we talk about platform authenticators, so built into a user's device, and roaming authenticators. So really, roaming authenticator is what Alex was talking about, YubiKeys, and platform authenticators are devices that have trusted platform module, iPhone, laptop with Windows Hello, where you're unlocking a secure enclave on the device with your face or something like that, right? In this case, a passkey is a syncable platform authenticator is one way to think about it, right? Passkeys are discoverable. WebAuthn is typically not discoverable. In most workforce implementations, it's hard to present key as the first factor when you're signing in. That's changing, but that is there. Does not have a synced option, and in most cases, passkeys can be a first factor, right? So passkeys at work, talk to Alex, basically. So user journeys for passkeys, I've got some diagrams in here, and I'll share the slides afterwards. But I would much prefer, if you want to have experience what signing up with a passkey looks like, if you grab your phone or navigate to that site, you can do it, and you can see how easy it is to sign up to a passkey on the spot. Give it another 10 seconds. I'll show it again in a minute, so if you don't get it this time, you can get it then. So was there a question? Or no? So basically what you'll see is this very exceptionally well-coded demonstration app. If you click login, you'll get presented with this screen, and you can sign up an account, or you can continue with passkey. You can put, as long as it's a valid email address, like in terms of formatting, you can put whatever you want in. You don't need access to the email account. But what if you hit sign up, you can start creating an account, you do continue, and then if you're on an iPhone, for example, you get presented with this, a passkey for this will be generated on your device. You hit continue, you scan your face, and you're logged in. So that's the sign up experience, and I haven't optimized this flow at all. This is just the default out of the box Auth0 sign up experience. As you can see, it's quite quick. So then to log in, even simpler, right? You come along, the passkey is discovered, it's shown up, you hit approve. So that's, if you didn't get it before, you can grab it again now. But that experience is, they come along, as soon as you load the login page, you get this pop-up. Sign in with the passkey you just created. So that's the discoverability of passkeys, where the passkey is, my iPhone obviously knows that I've created that passkey, it's there, it's discoverable, pop it up and sign it in. So it's as easy as kind of scanning your face then to log back into that app. And as I said before, if my phone and my laptop were in the same, were both logged into the same iCloud account, I'd have that same experience if I went and logged in on my laptop. Obviously, that flow is not going to exist for everybody. Not everyone is going to have the option of a laptop and a phone that are in the same, ecosystem. You have Android and a MacBook, Windows device, all those sorts of things, right? So how do you handle that scenario? That's where cross-device authentication comes into it. And this is another update to the set of standards around WebAuthn that really helps with this experience. And this uses a Bluetooth low energy connection with a device that has a passkey on it to provide it to another device. So effectively, on a laptop, I can come along, browse to the website, and get presented with an option to use a passkey from another device. And when you do that, as long as that other device is close enough within Bluetooth low energy range, it does some cryptographic mumbo jumbo and then logs you in, right? So the experience then you see is come along. So I'll, in this case, select use a different passkey and go use a phone or tablet security key or security key. And then it's going to present a QR code. I scan that QR code with the phone that has the passkey created on it. So that's me scanning the passcode. And then on my phone, I then get presented with the option of using my Face ID to sign in, and I can pick the passkey that I want to use to sign into that tab, right? Prompted to follow as you say, follow the steps of my device. Once you do that, I could just be signed in, but in this case, I'm also presented with the option to create another passkey. So why would I want to do that? That's so I then have another passkey or another credential that's saved locally on that device. I don't need to have the mobile close enough, but also it allows me to say, get my, Chromebook into the passkey ecosystem, and then when I go to my Android phone later, it's got the passkey on as well. So it's a way to share that authentication experience across multiple devices. It's just me logging in. So that's what I've just talked through as well there, right? So for customers, right, we talked about the experience. Google found once they rolled it out, the experience was so good for their customers that they enabled it by default. And then, I don't know if you've signed into your personal Gmail account recently on a new device, you will get aggressively prompted to enroll a passkey. And that's because it's so much better for them, right? We talked about usability before, that's just another view of it. But there are some challenges with this, right? It's a new standard, right? So you've got to start with things like device support. Who is your customer base? What sort of devices do they have access to? Like, are you trying to sell services to your yaya who's got a 20-year-old phone, right, that she just uses to talk to her kids? So these are things you've got to consider, right? And then there's even more recent devices, right? Like Windows 10 started prompting people with passkeys, but it hasn't been fully rebranded to passkeys yet, right? They still talk about security keys. There's flaky support, even in quote unquote kind of more modern systems, right? So how do you get it? The other thing is, particularly for work use cases, is where are they accessing it from and what sort of things can they have with them, right? So the YubiKey for Australia Post makes a lot of sense, right? Because in a lot of retail environments, you're not allowed to have a mobile phone, you're not allowed to have anything like that when you're working. you want something that can be supplied to the user that they can then use, right? If they can't use it, right? The other thing is shared devices and how you manage that, right? So maybe you do that with a cross-platform flow, or maybe not. Migration, reset, and recovery. So Zoe talked about migration. Even if you move to a new identity system that supports passkeys, you're going to have to migrate their passwords, right? First, you got to get them, you got to prove who they are before you can let them sign up with a passkey, things like that. And then recovery processes, right? So I sign up for some brand new site on my phone while I'm walking home in the rain, and then I drop my phone in a puddle, right? It's device bound. I'm screwed, basically, right? So how do you recover those flows? And that's where, particularly like that cross-device flow that encourages you to create another passkey is important. So it will be create as many or create multiple passkeys for devices, right? For consumers in particular. Challenges, and this is, I think, a big one. The vendors and the password managers and the password vaults all have kind of different approaches to this, right? So this is my work laptop with Chrome, Firefox, and Safari open. Safari knows that my device doesn't support passkeys because iCloud keychain is turned off on my work device. Firefox and Chrome don't have any idea that I've turned it off. Or they do, but they're not displaying a useful error code to me as a user, right? If I go to create a passkey on, say, my Firefox one, it just throws an error. If I do it on Chrome, it tries to save it to my work Chrome profile. Like, how do you explain that to a consumer? How do you explain what's going on with that, right? Like, super tricky. So part of the cross-ecosystem thing as well, right, is if I sign up on my, I mean, even today, like on my phone, I've got LastPass, I've got, you know, multiple password managers. I've got the inbuilt password manager. You can save that passkey to, you know, Bitwarden on your phone, and then it's not saved to your iCloud keychain like it's in Bitwarden. Like, try explaining that. Like, I can't even get my parents to use a password vault. How am I going to get them to understand that, right? So the cross-device does help with that, but like, you got to think through those sorts of things as well, right? The other thing is, like, if that passkey gets lost, or like, more like, you know, my son gets access to my iCloud account and copies my passkey and wants to do stupid stuff with it, how can I revoke that? So you got to think about that in your application as well, right? So final thoughts, it's the same as Alex said. Passkeys will replace passwords, and it will happen quicker than we expect, right? So that's my thing. That formatting is all off. Anyway, the slides will be posted on the imse.blog afterwards, and you can feel free to reach me on LinkedIn. If you want to learn like deep in the weeds technical mumbo jumbo for passkeys, you can go to learnpasskeys.io, which talks about how the flows all work and across device platforms and those sorts of things. But thank you.
Awesome stuff, Toby.